Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gamer needs. My name is Faz.
And I just turn up.
Yeah, Mr. Turnup.
Mr. Turnup.
Mr. Turnover. Speaking of apple turnovers, I have an apple. I know, I've got an apple flavoured drink tonight, and we're drinking beer for the first time, although it'll be like one because I could barely walk today, and I'm like, just, beer probably won't do us any good. But anyway, we are on the Wild Child Brewery, which we featured on one of our previous podcasts, possibly. I always say it's like kind of my favourite brewery. Still sort of is. They do some just excellent different flavoured stouts and porters. They do different IPAs as well, but a lot of the dark beers are where it's at. So I have got a toffee apple porter called Viridian Disguisement, which, I don't know what that means, but okay. Anyway, so yeah, I hope it tastes good. What about you, Rich? What about you, Mr. Turnover?
I have a sticky toffee milk stout, and it's really nice.
Oh, excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. So yeah, we're having some nice, lovely, quaffable, as Rich would say.
Very quaffable.
Very quaffable beers.
Arguably too quaffable.
Is there such a thing? Quaff naughty? I think that... Oh, that's good. The problem is that I've probably spoiled my flavouring, because I've got like Albus oil rubbed into my moustache, just sort of help me breathe for during the summer months. And summer months? Winter months. Summer months.
Wow.
The winter months. And yeah, and everything just smells and tastes like Albus oil. That does actually taste like toffee apple.
I can smell the appleness of that from over here.
All right, okay, that's good then. I thought you can smell my moustache from over here.
No, I can definitely smell the apple of your beer over the oil of your moustache.
The apple.
What have we become? What's happened to us, man?
The odd couple. Oh, they laugh, they sing, they joke.
They sing.
If only we would. This is a retro gaming podcast, so it's okay.
For some of your gaming.
That was good. It is pantomime season.
No, it isn't.
Oh, yes, it is. So, Jesus.
Fucking hate Christmas.
I love Christmas.
Why does that not surprise me? You look like you're prepping to be Santa now. Just, 40 years too early.
When just in the Santa Claus, when Tim Allen turns into Santa Claus, that's kind of, it's just like, I haven't been bestowed with any magical powers to become Santa. Yet. I'm trying to,
achieve it through the beard.
Exactly, yeah. Wish it to be true. Oh, Santa, it smells like Albus oil now.
It could be worse.
Rub it all over my white beard. So
bellowed Santa.
Anyway, so super uber special episodes coming up. One of these right now and one next week, which we will definitely film within the next 2 hours for next week. This one we're very excited about, and also the next one. But this one, super excited about. We are reviewing a bookazine. It's like Radio 4 over here.
Yeah.
It's like, shipping forecast again, and we're going to be reviewing books. I never thought I'd review it's a magazine really about gaming.
Yeah,
but
just a big one.
Yeah, exactly. So, maybe I did think I was going to do that at some point. So no game reviews this week. It is just, we're kind of reviewing the bookazine, but also using it to, I guess, evolve some conversations that we would already have anyway.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that we've kind of touched on a couple of times over the past however many months. So we're just kind of using it as a bit of a crutch, I guess.
Thank you.
To steer the conversation.
Thank you, crutch. So, Retro Gamer is our magazine of choice, which would shock nobody, I guess, really.
Nope.
And this is one of their specials. I think it was released this year. Let me just see. It just says first edition, printed in the UK. Now, one thing I noticed, it says $12.99 on the bookazine, but they charge £15 for this online. I know, so it's like you pay more to... But then I think do you pay for delivery? Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's included in it. But so me and Rich went halfsies on that because we're poor and we spend all our money on actual games. But 132 pages of pocket power. That probably sold it to us in terms of the actual, title is the Handheld Gaming Collection, which is what, drew us to it really. And it was nice that this came out at the same time that we started a podcast about handheld gaming. Really.
Yeah, pretty convenient.
Yeah, I know. Well done, Retro Gamer. If only you would answer our letters.
Yeah, it's still a sore point, but it's fine. It's my fault for asking inane questions.
Do you think we could send them this podcast in a letter?
No. I mean, we could try and type it out. Do them a transcript.
Imagine typing out the start of this podcast. Oh, yeah, Santa, great, you smell. You're drunk. Great. So we're not just gonna obviously read this some sort of reading.
Page 1.
Yeah, some sort of weird festive reading, but we are going to use it as a crutch and kind of go through a little bit of what these guys talk about. And I think that probably the main question we'll probably start off with and then come back to at the end, I think, is almost, greatest handhelds of all time. Who are we to say, especially since I've not played them all, who are we to say what the greatest handheld of all time is? We are just two mere men, drinking our
in a
flavoured
spare room
stout
on a Monday night.
But
it's all totally fine.
But we're gonna fucking do it anyway. So
yeah, we're here now.
Yeah, we're here. So, what was your thoughts and feelings about the first sort of article in this bookazine, which is all about, it's called Clash of the Handhelds, and they talk about all the different positives and negatives of all these different handheld consoles that we've had over the years, and then we'll get into a few of the sort of articles after that as well. But I just want to point out what rankings were given effectively by Retro Gamer without them. They didn't put any numbers on it because I don't think they expected people to do this necessarily to count it and rank it. But looking at the actual things that they've ranked per handheld, battery life, ergonomics, which is a lovely word for fitting around a human.
Yeah, how does it feel to hold?
Support, which I guess is the gaming software support. Tech, which is very wide and nebulous. Impact. So, obviously I think that's quite straightforward.
How hard it hits you and how much it hurts.
Exactly,
when someone throws it at you.
In the cultures.
Yep.
And screen. So what does screen look like? Which I feels like a very sort of surely that's just tech. Is that not the tech bit?
Yeah, I mean, arguably, but then I guess because they are screens with buttons, it's kind of it is an important bit of it, but at the same time it does feel like anything past a certain age is just going to take an absolute kicking on that front.
But I don't think it actually does. That is in so each of those what do we call them?
Categories.
Thank you very much. Yeah, categories. They score them out of 10, and so I counted them up because they're just little bars. But I thought, well, actually, we're gonna put an arbitrary number on this and see which of these handhelds comes out on top. So just to kind of list the handhelds that are here, because otherwise, this is very much an audio podcast. But Game Boy, Microvision, I didn't even know what that was, and now I do. Neo Geo Pocket, Game Boy Color, Game Gear, the PSP. What else have we got in here? The Wonder Swan Color, that was only released in Japan, I believe. Engage, the Nokia phone cum handheld, which I had my hands on a couple of times. A GP32, don't know what that is. The PS Vita, hooray! The Nintendo DS, the Lynx, the Supervision, the Pokemon Mini. Is that what now?
It's basically a Tamagotchi, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the Nomad, the 3DS. What else we got in here? The Gizmondo. Never heard of one of those before?
I have, yeah. Never played one, but I have heard of them.
Yeah. The Game.com, which I'm eager to talk about a little bit later on. The Turbo Express, which just sounds like some sort of weed, or...
I would bloody love a Turbo Express. I would.
And then Neo Geo Pocket, Color, and Game Boy Advance. So they are the combatants, if you will, in the clash of the handhelds. So because of some of those are shite, and we don't want to go into loads of detail about it, I just kind of took anything that scored over... So 40 out of 60. So there was 6 categories. They scored 10 up to 10 each in those 6 categories. So you got 60. And so anything scored over 40, including our top rankings of scores. So, looking at the scores then, coming in last place out of all those, out the best ones, the last best ones, joint last best is the Neo Geo and the Nintendo 3DS. Then, fatefully for Rich, the PS Vita with 42
That's
out of 60.
Isn't it?
Yes it is. And then the PSP, 44 out of 60. So 2 marks more for the PSP than the PS Vita. Just chalk that one up, just a little note there. Coming in at 45 in second place. Oh no, third place, can't count. The Game Boy Advance. Then at 46 out of 60, the Nintendo DS. And then at 47 out of 60, the best handheld ever, according to Retro Gamer and their bookazine, without them ranking it, but we're ranking it, is the Game Boy by Nintendo. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about all that jazz?
How do I feel? I think having the Game Boy up at the top makes sense, largely because of the impact.
Yes, they scored 10 out of 10 for the impact.
Yeah, I think, and it's a comprehensive list of what they've got in here. But the thing is that I think as soon as you start going through this, like the Gamecom that you've just flicked past there, like I think when you start going down this kind of route, you're always going to get people that go, "Oh, but what about this or what about that?" And like, so I just
sounds like us,
doesn't it? But I distinctly remember that my
that's from episode 7.
My
games.
My granddad had this.
Sorry, where's this going here?
Yeah, my granddad had a handheld that he let me use a few times. That,
holy shit! What's going on?
Had like a screen built into a cartridge, and it was called a Game Child.
And
so,
did he make it himself out of wood?
I don't think so.
And clay.
But someone made it. And so if the Game.com is in here, like I know that was like what, Tiger or something, like one of the big toy manufacturers. But it just seems like, you could potentially go down this huge route of these like LCD screened monstrosities and just get lost forever.
Yeah.
Like all of those fucking in fact, was it Tiger again that used to do the ones like the single game in a handheld type things like in the 90s and that. So I get you have to draw a line somewhere, is my point. I think the stuff they cover makes sense. It did really make me want a Turbo Express and a Sega Nomad again. These are things that pop up. As in I want them occasionally.
Oh, right, okay.
And then it will kind of subside for a couple of years, and then I really want one again. And they're just more expensive that time.
It is really like sort of provocative, evocative, something. Anyway, the vocatives. It's one of those in terms of how it makes me feel towards wanting a handheld, like a retro handheld, such as even just having a game. I have got a Game Boy Pocket, but to have an old bricky Game Boy in my hand again. I never owned one, but certainly one of my cousins owned one, and I think my uncle as well. And the sheer, when you talk about impact, I think of if I threw it at somebody, the impact it would have upon them.
You would know about.
You would know about it.
The impact would be great.
And just looking at one of the articles on the Game Boy, and it talks about the best 25 Game Boy games of all time. And speaking of bricks, it's probably no surprise that Tetris comes in there at number 1. And I think this was voted for by the readers of Retro Gamer. And that kind of shocks me a little bit because but I feel like they're definitely leaning on that impact thing, and I know it was packaged in with the Game Boy, and maybe this is me showing my youth, if you will, but like I guess that it's such a simple concept of a game, and I went back and played on the Switch on the Game Boy Virtual Room Boy thing, whatever it's called on the Switch, and played some Tetris the other day just to kind of see, is this as catchy now for me on a Switch playing Tetris again? It was fine. Like, I found myself playing Tetris. That's to put it bluntly. I didn't find myself feeling a lot about it though. I didn't find myself thinking at one point, I imagine this will have been the best game I've ever played on a handheld console.
I think
that would be Pokemon.
yeah, but I think that is showing your youth, because like the Game Boy was kind of on its way out, wasn't it, when Pokemon came out? So like, if you were there at launch playing something as accomplished as Tetris,
I was 1 year old when Tetris came out.
And how old were you when Pokemon came out?
I guess 7 or 8. I guess I'm probably like 9, or in fact, it was 99. It came over to the UK, so
something like that.
Yeah, the Western world. So it's probably like I'll have been, like nearly 11. I guess.
Yeah. So
better at games than when I was 1 year old.
Yeah,
potentially. Who knows how good I was at Tetris at 1?
But the point I'm trying to get at,
sorry,
is the fact that if you had played something 11 years prior, Tetris would have been mind blowing. But also, it's that kind of fact that it's the same console.
Yeah,
11 years later.
Yeah, that is wild, isn't it?
Which is wild, and there it was, standing strong still.
Yeah.
And then off the back of Pokemon coming out, you have the variant, like the Game Boy Pocket and Color and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think for again, it comes back around to impact. I think it speaks to the Game Boy's strengths, but also I genuinely think that they are right with Tetris.
Okay.
And because it basically anybody could play it.
Yeah, that's true.
And
true.
Play it for as long or as short a time as you fancy.
I saw an advert recently, like as recently as about 12 hours ago, that it sort of must have targeted me on Instagram, that I must have mentioned the word Tetris out loud at some point. And it was a actual physical game of, I guess, a stand that was balanced very delicately upon another plastic stand.
Yeah.
And you used Tetris bricks to build a pattern upon it, and each person would take a turn, and then that would then cause this stand to fall. If obviously you did it wrong, it's just general, board game balancing game. But the fact that the Tetris blocks were there, and very clearly it was a game of Tetris, effectively just not named Tetris.
Yeah.
To see that in 2023, and obviously the advert's there going, ha ha ha, what a great time we're having playing this. And I was like, you are having a great time, I see it.
But I mean, you can get like lamps and stuff like that, the Tetris blocks and stuff like that. Like it's considering how simple a concept in a game it is, to have that much kind of mainstream cut through is crazy.
Mm-hmm. And in terms then, I guess, kind of firing back a little bit early in Tetris then, and there was some things in here that I learned a lot from reading this. That is in, so I became, I think, a better observer of gaming through just reading this one.
You're going to say a better
magazine.
person for some reason. I don't know why.
It really changed me. What it changed me to remember is how much I fucking love Mr. Game & Watch when I'm playing with him in Smash Brothers. God. And I didn't realise how many Game & Watch consoles there were of physical single games. Like, isn't it, it's just weird that you don't even, sometimes you just don't interact with a certain part of the gaming world, and that is one of them for me, is almost that I just didn't even realise that was a thing. And I just knew that everyone was like, oh, the first sort of handheld thing was a Game & Watch. But I was under the impression there was maybe like 2 or 3 of them. Like, not, was it 60 of them or something like that? It's like ridiculous.
It's a big number. And like, I think it's showing our youth relatively, because, there's quite a lot of this stuff where it's just, it feels like an unknown, and I am lucky enough to have one of these Game & Watches somewhere. So like, I've got a Donkey Kong one, and it's really, really odd to pick it up, right, and realise how far Nintendo's consoles and handhelds have come, but simultaneously, actually, how little they've changed. So like the jump from a Game & Watch to a DS, would be the easy thing to point at, is relatively small. But then you get down to the nitty gritty of like, hang on, isn't that D-pad the same as, the Game Boy Advance or whatever, or close to? And little things like that. So yeah, it's it is kind of strange seeing these things up close.
I had Game and Watch Gallery 3 for the Game Boy, so the compilation sort of pack.
Yeah.
But not until I read this magazine in 2023 did I realise that's what I had, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
even though it says it. Just put, I'll have had that when I was 10 or 11 years old on my Game Boy and not understood, because I just didn't realise 10 years prior or 15 years prior these things existed in such a quantity. And the way that they've produced them, in terms of that you get little mini sort of arcade boxes, if you will, and actual cabinets, but then some of them are like just like having a NES controller size as well. It's just incredible that they did this, and it feels like, oh well, now that I've read this anyway, I feel like, oh well, it's just carte blanche that someone just decides to do that, and it's just like,
copy and paste.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, do what you feel like, isn't it? That's what it feels like. Just like just crack on. I don't know. It just feels like so strange that it feels really revolutionary, and I get that now. Yeah. I get it. So that was nice to kind of get that feeling from this, really.
Yeah, it's good for a bit of historical context.
Yeah, and history that I was genuinely really interested in. And I have previously been a person so reading retro gaming in general makes me realise how little I know about computer programming. So I will just skip waves and paragraphs of general writing in Retro Gamer where I'm like, I don't understand what that is, but I am interested in it. I just don't understand it. But I felt this was really quite accessible, this one, actually, for in terms of a special. It felt like it tried to include you a bit more. So it was good. I felt like I learnt a lot more from this than I did a normal Retro Gamer, because it just won't go in my tiny little brain.
But at the same time, this doesn't feel superficial or anything like that. It's not like it skims over everything like that's just seeing you get to that Atari Lynx one. Some of the articles in them are actually pretty chunky.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are accessible is a good word, I think.
Well, the Lynx is a really good example of, like you say, that something being extremely interesting. I didn't realise that Epics existed. Yeah, and they created the Lynx, and then they were completely screwed over, I think, pretty much by reading the article, in terms of screwed out of the Lynx, so that they took it to Nintendo. Nintendo were like, no, look at this Game Boy we've got in this vault. You're fucked. And they were like...
Is that the one where they literally show them it in the meeting?
Yeah, and they were like, that's the most Machiavellian thing ever.
It's a dick move, isn't it?
That is amazing.
You think that's fun?
Well, yeah, no. Bring your colourful Lynx over here, and you will be crushed by this. Someone literally probably just got the Game Boy and hit them over the head with it.
It's like something out of a nerdy version of The Godfather.
My son, you cannot come here and disrespect me with this fucking Lynx. That was my Godfather there.
Yeah, that's good.
It was all right, it was passable. So, what else did we want to say about this? Have you got anything kind of off your top of your head? I've got a few bits and bats on notes and stuff, but
I think it's the kind of thing that it's accessible. It covers a lot of areas, but it is the sort of thing that will always throw up stuff that you're kind of like, oh, I'd love to know a bit more about that, and they don't get to it, and so you end up having to trawl a load of stuff online. Which is, it's no bad thing, because they can't cover everything. But yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener and a bit of a chance to do some learning. But like you said, it again, seeing as you got to that Game Gear section, it's like it just what made me want to buy more stuff.
It's funny because the Game Gear doesn't appear in the top scoring handhelds.
Yeah,
which is interesting. It might just be the categories that were used by Retro Gamer that maybe meant it didn't get in there. But I don't know. It feels like, to me, I know of Game Gears, and obviously previous of the pod when you get your tiny little Game Gear out.
It's not the size, it's how you use it.
Which is weird. It's used weirdly. It's an odd thing. Anyway, weird fucking micro Game Gear. Anyway, but I feel like I know a lot about Game Gear, and maybe not that much in depth, but certainly I would have felt it had more impact, or it would have scored higher, if that makes sense. I thought it would have been more of a influential handheld, and it doesn't seem to be the case.
I think you're right. I think it does feel strange that it's not sort of high on the list. I think from what little I know about them, I think things like the kind of battery life and the kind of games that it had are probably what held it back.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since I've read the magazine, so I can't remember off the top of my head what they say about it. But if I had to guess, I think it was that, and also the screen. I don't recall anybody ever saying the screen's great or anything like that. Arguably, like, I wonder if it would, it could squeak into the bottom of the list, maybe. But
I think it probably was high 30s out of 60, to be fair. So I don't think it was shamed. And it's interesting that the the bookazine, it goes to great lengths to almost, it's a bit of a love letter to things like, I'd say, Game Gear, Neo Geo, and WonderSwan are the three that I can think of that it feels like there's almost nearly a whole page at the end of the article saying
it wasn't a failure as much as you think.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
you can love these systems still.
Yeah,
and it almost made me feel like the annoyance around, I wish Game Gears were better made and didn't leak shit everywhere and die, because I kind of want one, because you've made me think that even no matter how malign something is, or maybe previously not loved, certainly, from a selling point of view, for the amount of sales there were, it doesn't matter. You could probably still love it and enjoy it.
Yeah, you'll find something that you can get into, and you'll find something that you like.
Well, and it was just, I don't know, like, for example, even the game.com, is it just a game.com?
I think it's game.com.
So game.com, even that, for me, that was sort of something that I thought, well, actually, I'd be kind of interested in actually owning, so even though there's a very minimal amount of games, I think it said something, there's like 27 games released for it. So this is as you previously referred to, Tiger made it, and it looks hand drawn on, almost like an extra sketch of the game. It's like the game's been extra sketched together, and so it looks
awful.
It looks incredible. I'm sorry. If I go to that article about Gamecom, look at these things here. It looks so clear on the screen to me, and you can tell what it is.
Gonna stop you right there. Looks so clear, right?
Tell me what isn't clear about this.
Yeah, well, you're looking at it in a magazine, and they'd have probably got those from an emulator.
Yeah, right. Okay, fair enough.
I implore you to go onto YouTube when you get home. Go onto Classic Game Room. Did a bunch of reviews of the Gamecom stuff. Go and have a look. See how much difficulty he has filming it.
Oh wow! Right.
Right.
Okay.
You don't even have to listen to the review and what he's saying. Just see what the camera sees of those things in motion, and I think you will come away with a different opinion.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, the sample of the game.com that they use in the magazine looks extremely good, and I think they leave sort of thanks for different people who brought these systems to them. And they look like the best systems they've ever probably held for 20 years. But
I get the impression that everybody that contributed probably has a complete collection of games for it or something like that.
Well, 20...
if you're in the club, you are in the club.
I imagine being in a really weird club with someone playing a game
there's something out there
in the corner. Just like Drake or something, just dropping his game.com out. That would be Drip. Is Drip okay to say? Probably.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
What's a Drake? It's a male duck.
You're using lots of words beginning with D, and I don't know why.
Oh God, I'm choking. 20 games for the game.com. Just reading there, of which one of them, Lights Out. Did you ever play the actual physical copy of Lights Out? It was Tiger obviously brought it out. It was like
does that ring a bell?
So it was like a little grey box, and you had really lovely
little squares.
Yeah, really squashy, lovely squares, and basically you would press them, and you had to obviously get all the lights out, but it would jump around. So it was basically like a Rubik's Cube, but an electronic Rubik's Cube.
Right.
And my sister owned one, and I would regularly sneak into her bedroom to steal it. Like, as in, like, that would be the one thing I'd go in and be like, right, I'm going to wait until she's not fucking home and I'm getting that lights out of her. Like, just like, and not really have a clue what I was doing. But like, it told me I was on level 3. I'm like, am I? Like, I don't really understand what I'm doing, but it's so tactile. So much fun. Yeah, and that's one of the games on game.com. And I was like, oh, like, am I going to get a really old, crappy console for like £40 of eBay that is really faded?
Get a complete collection in a shoebox.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to get Lights Out, try and find the actual, physical version like I was just talking about.
Is that going to be crazy money?
Yeah, it's pretty much crazy money. It wasn't horrendous. It was hard to find one, but it was like 50 quid for like,
really?
50 British pounds for
something
that would have cost, I guess at the time, maybe 30 British pounds. And
if that.
It was like poor condition. It was like the lights were fucking out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was nothing. So it was a bit of a wild one. So yeah, just the things that I would spend money on. What an awful human I am. So Nintendo, they battered everybody
they're good, aren't they?
They battered everyone to absolute pieces. Let's talk about them, because obviously our podcast is, directed mostly towards Sony, PSP, and PS Vita.
General vicinity of Sony.
And we'll come to those guys. Look, they've had their due on our podcast. They're going to get it again, from this one. But, let's just talk about the sheer dominance of Nintendo especially over the handheld gaming market, and how they just own it. And I'm looking. This is, I guess, this gets scattered around in the magazine, but certainly the sales, if you will, of just handheld consoles. So if I go through, I guess the top sort of, let's say top 5, and who has them. Nintendo 3DS, released in 2011, 76 million, call it 76 million. The PSP, so 2004, between 80 and 82 million sales worldwide. The Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance, 2001, 82 million, so call that the same as the PSP. Then the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which is always lumped together, and I didn't realise that until this magazine told me that they always put the Game Boy Color Pocket and the actual Game Boy together. They
seems
see
like cheating.
But they see it as the same system,
right?
Which it is cheating. You're correct. But even then, 119 million sales worldwide, and then the Nintendo DS. This shocked me. 154 million sales worldwide, released in 2004. So a couple of things about this shocked me. Number one, everyone always goes, the PS2 is the best-selling console of all time. How many more million did the PS2 sell than the Nintendo DS? So Nintendo DS, 154 million. How many do you think?
Not many.
Yeah, 1 million more. So, if I'm Nintendo, I'm going back to count up those receipts again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I said, you get,
what a recount.
Yeah, exactly. You get an exam and you're like, I got a C by, I could have got a B by 1 mark. Or I'll pay the £45 for the recount just in case. I'd be doing that if I was Nintendo. Like, the Nintendo DS is just 1 million. I mean, obviously it is 1 million, but in the grand scheme of things, just 1 million sales less than the PlayStation 2, which is always lauded as the best-selling console of all time. I knew the DS had done very, very well, but I didn't realise it was so close to being the best-selling console ever. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like we were saying earlier about like the kind of value of that sort of mainstream cutover. I remember my friend Andrew's mum had a DS once upon a time, and she would like read on it and stuff like that, and occasionally do like those kind of shovelware collections of puzzles and like crossword type things almost, and she would just get them, and there were a lot of people that I think fell into a similar bracket, and it was a kind of intuitive thing, and arguably more so I would think than the Wii and like motion controls and stuff like that. You didn't have to stand up to use it. It was more like a book, and you could protect the screen by closing it, like Double Trouble.
That feels like a massive selling point in a way. Like almost having a closing screen seems to have really helped the DS almost over the PSP, and I remember at the time thinking, I absolutely love my PSP, and obviously I'd bought one, so I was like, gonna like sing about it till the cows come home, and it was an incredible machine. The power, the sheer raw power it had, probably versus the DS. I remember having it at university, sort of first year uni, and that was like maybe I don't know, like a year and a half, 2 years by that point, and then my friend turned up with Dr. Kawashima.
Oh, the brain training.
The brain training,
Yeah.
and I was looking at it and I was thinking, God, this looks like shit, but it looks like a lot of fun. Like,
yeah. But then the other thing as well with the DS was that it could play the Game Boy Advance games.
Yeah.
And that as well, you could arguably say that, oh yeah, well those figures for the number of consoles sold could add to the GBA sales.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be wrong, but you could say it.
That voice crept out there again.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think I use it for my mealy-mouthed cretins.
So, speaking, I guess, really about that, and obviously you mentioned Andrew's mum, and she had a DS, and me and her now have something in common, and that is that I now own a Nintendo DS, an original grey Nintendo DS that can play Game Boy Advance cartridges.
Nice.
So the thing about that is, though, I got it over the weekend for £20 from a charity shop, as you used to sort of dabble in the trading of gaming from a charity. It looks in really good nick.
Good.
The issue is it didn't come with a charger. It obviously has no charge. I'm waiting for the charger to arrive from eBay, as it is obviously. I didn't realise this. I mean, I kind of thought it might be. It is a bespoke charger for the Advance and the DS, so you have to get the right cable. Not the old universal USB. So I'm hoping that when that arrives and charges up, that it actually works. But it looks like it looks in. It's barely got a scratch or anything on it. I was really shocked when it turned up.
Yeah.
Especially because for £20, like including postage, I've got the second best selling game console of all time that I've not really dabbled in, and I'm not gonna lie, like I will use this for emulations and homebrews, I think, because I'm not necessarily I've not that's a world I've not lived in, and I feel like I want to now a little bit live in that as legally as I can. So I want to see what's out there, and especially in terms of homebrews and things like that, people have made legitimately, and sort of see what that looks like on a DS as well. So, this might become living le DS.
That's a stretch.
Dance?
No.
Of life? I'm going to do it. We sing, we dance.
Doing the dance of life, and I wish he'd stop.
Get out of my room. Oh, well.
So, like, with the DS as well, because I bought myself one a few years ago.
You told me not to.
Yeah, I know I told you not to. And the reason I told you not to is because I bought one and then promptly modded it to be a giant Game Boy Advance. And, like, I could count on one hand the number of DS games that I've played, and I've been like, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to hang on to that. But the Game Boy Advance, like, is legitimately one of my favourite consoles of all time. So in a toss-up between being able to play Game Boy Advance games on a slightly bigger screen or playing DS games, I know which way I'm leaning.
Yeah.
So
I know, but like I guess that it's an era that I didn't miss out on. I just chose not to imbibe. Yeah. I was a home console person, and I had my Game Boy Pocket, and I was like, right, no, and then I just went straight to PSP after that. There was a stretch of years where you call it 6-7 years, where actually, I mean, what shocks me, and we may as well get onto the Game Boy Advance now, especially since you sort of are saying it's one of my favourite consoles of all time, how short the lifespan of the Game Boy Advance was, in so much that the original, I guess, Game Boy Advance was, I think it was like a year and a half, 2 years before they made it an SP, and they had the flip screen, and then they brought the DS in 2004. So if you think about that, then like Game Boy Color being out sort of 1999, 2000 or whatever it was, that it feels like a very short window of time for something that you're saying is your favorite console, one of your favorite consoles.
Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, I'm not saying it isn't, and there's no reason why it shouldn't have a short lifespan and be amazing.
I think for me, it's a couple of things. It's because it was right place, right time. Like it came into my life at the right point, and I could invest
the eternal
time
sunshine
in it.
Of
basically. I had friends who played it as well. so you could do the multiplayer stuff.
Yeah.
But also, that first sort of run of Game Boy Advance is like we were saying about the DS, could also go back and play the old Game Boy games, which I had a stack of anyway. So for me, it was kind of like a bit of an upgrade to what was almost a SNES.
Yeah.
But I could still play my old Game Boy games. And I just really like the form factor of that, like Mark 1 Game Boy Advance. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that they... I mean, I understand why they felt they had to move away from that in terms of what they did with the SP and things, and having a folding screen also. Yeah. But looking at it now, yeah, it looks special.
But I'm pretty sure if you go through my collection of stuff, I would put good money... hang on, let me think about this. Yeah, no, I would.
Have you got good money?
No, but hypothetically, if you were to go through my collection, I'm quietly confident that it would be Game Boy Advance games that you managed to find the most ways to play.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've got however many Game Boy Advance consoles. I've got a Game Boy Advance player for the GameCube, and I've modded that DS, and I've got Game Boy Micro and all that. So I'm pretty sure of all the things in my collection, the Game Boy Advance games are the things that you could most easily play, if you like.
Fair enough.
Which is not deliberate. But now I think about it, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
No, fair enough.
And it's got some games on it that I genuinely really, really like. And so, yeah, like I would encourage anybody thinking of taking the plunge to definitely explore that library.
And so, but you're saying you should own a Game Boy Advance rather than a Nintendo DS?
Not necessarily. Like if you've got the DS and it can run the Game Boy Advance games, sure. Mm-hmm. But if you've got a Game Boy Advance,
I'm hoping it can.
You can go back and play the original Game Boy. You can play Tetris on it, original Tetris, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I would rather go from Game Boy Advance back that extra generation rather than DS and back that generation to Game Boy Advance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough. And there's a top 25 of Game Boy Advance games in here.
Yep.
Number 1, Metroid Fusion.
Yep.
Advance Wars. I've heard so many good things about Advance Wars and people wanting more Advance Wars in their lives at all times. Never played it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Really good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. And is there anything that you remember as a specific memory? Things that you know?
Castlevania up there, Aria of Sorrow.
Such a Castlevania bitch.
I am, yeah.
You knew, I didn't know, but when we started this project, I've known you so...
like the Castlevania bitches
into it.
I didn't know until we started doing this. But Astro Boy, and there was a follow-up to Gunstar Heroes as well. So Treasure did a couple of really, really good things on it as well.
Cool.
WarioWare. So yeah, like there's a lot of really, really good games in there.
Excellent. And I'm just thinking then, just kind of like talking about the best-selling handheld consoles of all time. Something kind of popped into my head that I was thinking about, the worst ones as well, and thinking about the bottom of the list. And these are also catered for in this magazine, which is, I really appreciate that. Even if, excuse me, some of them only get a double page spread, and some of them get whole articles. But you look at the N-Gage. So I remember the Nokia N-Gage existing. I remember that you used to go into gaming shops, and it would be there on the sort of a sample stand, and you could play Tony Hawk on it. And I genuinely at the time thought not that I was a massive wide thinker of this, but I thought this was going to change the world almost in my brain. I was like, wow, this is a game, a phone that plays games. Who'd have seen that? Who'd have thought
it? What sorcery is this?
Yeah, no. And here I am with a phone that plays games and looks.
What sorcery is this?
But at the same time, though, and I've talked about the Razer Kishi before, and I kind of just almost do that now, but just I clip something onto my phone and
instead of holding it sideways or whatever.
Yeah, that was just the problem, wasn't it? It just looked with the buttons, and that was a bit weird, wasn't it? Like
seeing that article that you had to take the battery out to change games or something like that as well.
Yeah, that's
an oversight, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. That's just someone's fucked up big time on the way in, haven't they? They've released it and gone, oh no!
You put the battery where?
Jeff in accounts
Jeff.
who got run over earlier in Burnout Legends. That is in, like he went from working with Nokia Engage to the Forestry Commission, and that's why I ran him over. The crimes against Engage.
Are you okay?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, sir. So,
are you actually okay?
I don't even know anymore. The Neo Geo Pocket and Colour is the second worst handheld of all time.
Which really want one.
Yeah, it's meant to be really good.
So much so that I've actually gone and picked, because they've got a couple of collections on the Switch. So I've actually treated myself to one of the collections.
Okay.
And like they're good. They're really good games. But the thing that kind of gets my attention, especially as an unabashed lover of arcade stuff, thumbstick that's clicky. Micro switched thumbstick. So like 8-bit Do have the Neo Geo controller. I think it's the Neo Geo CD or something like that. But also clicky thumbstick. And so I thought between getting that and getting the Neo Geo Pocket collection, it's kind of like I've got one.
Yeah, I think you probably made the right move there. Then.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah. I mean, like I know that they were made. I know again something that I've learned from this, this magazine is that they were made by a company called SNK.
Yep.
I see SNK floating around in games where it's like a fighting game. It's like someone versus SNK, and now I know who SNK are.
Like, you're going to fucking learn who SNK are. Come in this house and say you don't know who SNK are.
I don't know who SNK are. Jeez. I mean, nobody did.
I don't make you go sit in the garden.
That would be really mean. It's cold out. I've got this cold. I mean, the Bulbasaur's swearing off. And then the worst selling, less than 1 million, the Atari Lynx, as previously discussed, that it was the Epix Lynx that then became the Atari Lynx when the Atari went, it's ours now, mate. But then I think they probably regretted that it became theirs almost in a way.
But I can't help but think that between like the, because they had a couple of Lynx collections on Evercade, and also there's some Lynx games in the Atari 50 collection that's doing rounds on consoles at the moment. And I wonder if you totted those 3 games up, would you have more sales than actual Lynxes in the wild?
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I can't help but think that maybe you do.
Yeah, you probably. I would say so. I mean, the only game that I kind of noticed off their sort of perfect top 10 games for the Lynx and stuff, the only one that I've really kind of played before is Lemmings, and that's just a port to the Lynx that is in. And it looks like Lemmings in every other console.
I'll tell you what, though, looking at that list, because I've got one of these collections on Evercade, Blue Lightning is on it.
It looks really good from the screenshot.
It's genuinely really impressive. And I can only imagine that sitting there when this thing came out and playing on it would have been like genuinely mind-blowing. It's really impressive.
And to have the forethought to think that you could play it left-handed or right-handed as well, looking at the console itself. You could flip it over because they gave you enough buttons to do that with.
There's all sorts of fun stuff
really
like that
cool,
in handhelds. This is what makes handhelds fun, though, is that kind of stuff, or like the Wonder Swan, where you could play it in Tate mode to play your shmups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Flip it to portrait. And, you fast forward to the Evercade EXP and stuff like that with the little button that does the same job and a couple of extra buttons. And it's all those little innovations that I really like about handhelds.
Yeah. Definitely feels like that's a great word to use. Like, they are innovative.
Yeah.
And it seems to be, I mean, this is probably me just saying it out loud, what I feel inside that, might not be factual, but it's always like...
You mean an opinion?
Yeah. Oh, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I'm trying to get to a word here, Rich.
Clearly.
And my opinion is... Maybe I've never had an opinion before.
Oh, God, it's like all those people on YouTube that insist that addicting is a word. No, the word is fucking addictive. We've got a word. It's working fine.
So my opinion is that... What was I saying?
I don't know.
Anyway, the handhelds, it does feel to be like the area that you get the most growth out of gaming the quickest. I don't know why that is, but they just seem to develop quicker and quicker. And certainly have over time to me in my head. And you look at the jump up to, rounding back off to the PSP and the PS Vita, and seeing such power drilled down into a handheld console not long after the I guess, the PSP, 2004? And you think that 5 years prior to that, you were looking at the graphics that you had on a Game Boy, like is in the tail end of a Game Boy. I know that's sort of concertinaing the timeline a little bit, but certainly that is that's incredible to think that growth within that period of time. You kind of go through the Game Boy Advance, the Neo Geos, all those things into a PSP.
All right, let me build on that then, because I think you're onto something. So,
hooray!
Could you argue then that, say, for a fair chunk of these handhelds' sort of collective lifespan, a big part of the drive was to make it more like home consoles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of get to that point. We'll call it around the PSP kind of era. It's a very crude generalization, but we'll go with it. And then you kind of have this whole, okay, well, we've kind of caught up to them now. What else can we do with the form? And that's where you get your kind of Vitas and your DSs and your touch screens. And then you start to go down that route. And then they're like, fuck, smartphones. What do we do? How do we differentiate it? And then you get to now where you kind of have the Switch that kind of brings all this stuff together and kind of becomes its own thing. And so where do you go from there?
So that we've done such a great segue into something we wanted to speak. Yeah, no, well done us.
My God.
Who thought it was going to happen?
And it took us nearly a year.
And the conversation I wanted to have really was around the Switch, but also the Quest as well, which we've talked about previously here as well. Yeah. Which, look, I know I'm stretching the boundaries of of everything in the world. Obviously, I'm a real front runner there. But the idea that the Quest, now that it is untethered from what it was when it was, tethered. What was it called? Previous, it was not Oculus Rift. Thank you.
Right. And that was helpful. Then.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you look at the Switch, and these come under, when you try to look it up, I guess, really. Are they handheld? Are they a home console? They're a hybrid, because that's, I think, the only part of the market that game consoles, if they want to be handheld or portable, can live in the world of the smartphone.
Okay.
And you look at how many sales the Switch has had so far then. So since 2017, 132 million. Mm-hmm. So that would slot it in the handheld world, firmly in at number 2, more than the Game Boy. I don't personally see the Switch as a handheld console per se. I get why you call it a hybrid. I feel like with just the Joy-Cons on it, it feels like it would, I don't want to take it out too much. I feel like it's going to break. But a Switch Lite, for example, that is a genuine handheld console. So it's just interesting to see where we're at with it and where games developers and console developers will go next to think, how do we keep things portable but not smartphones? And can they do that?
I mean, it will be interesting, but I just want to present a counterpoint quickly. The Switch is absolutely a handheld. The Switch is absolutely and definitely a handheld, and anything VR is not.
Okay.
Tethers or not.
But why?
But why? Okay, cool. I'm glad you asked. So, Switch. You'd play it on a bus. VR you would not. At least currently. So if you can't play it on fucking public transport, it's not a handheld. Also, and this is a bit of a crucial point that I think is often overlooked with this sort of thing, the Switch's guts are effectively mobile. It's a mobile chipset in it. Like the graphics, the processor, all that kind of stuff, they're mobile versions. They're not the quote-unquote full-fat sort of console ones. Mm-hmm. And so I think the fact that it's got like a mobile CPU, call it, and you can play it on a fucking bus, I think instantly makes it a handheld.
I mean, that should have really been in the... it probably was, actually, to be fair, in the advertisement when it first came out. You just the Switch, you can play it on a fucking bus.
Yeah, I wouldn't play a MetaQuest on a bus.
I would love to see it happen.
Don't get me wrong. I could
get some Beat Saber on the go.
I can see a future where you get to the point where the devices themselves are compact enough and the way they can track your movements are sophisticated enough, that you can get the form factor down to, say, glasses size, sure.
Yeah.
As long as you don't have to flail about like an idiot to do whatever, and you've got a bit of space, I could totally see them being more portable. But I could also see, if that is the case, I could see them being marketed as a portable version of a MetaQuest or whatever, rather than MetaQuest 4. It's smaller now. That sort
Which
of
is
thing.
kind of what happened with the MetaQuest 3
Well,
so
yeah,
far.
basically.
But it's more powerful, same thing.
So that would be my argument, is that I think VR, by its nature, at the moment, is inherently tied to maybe not the TV or a console, but your property.
yeah, well, and it certainly is that, isn't it? So owning a MetaQuest 2, like, even going outside in natural sunlight, doesn't work.
Yeah,
I thought that it would. It didn't. It did not enjoy it very well.
Instantly means that it's not handheld.
Yeah. and that's fine. Like, I mean, I was not opening up a genuine conversation necessarily.
Well, you've got one.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. I mean, like, I kind of at one point was thinking, how do I even drum up an argument on this? And I knew that there wouldn't necessarily be one. I just wanted to. Much like the internet, like, so addicting.
Fuck off.
But like, just interestingly enough, though, that is in just talking about the Oculus Quest, MetaQuest. The first Quest only sold it was literally 500,000, whereas the Quest 2 has sold 20 million. Like, so actually,
I mean, pretty good uptick.
Yeah, so it's not. Will agree. I will bend to your will. It is not a handheld console, but if it was slotted in there, it would be, it would have sold more than the Vita so far. Do you know what I mean? Like, which is interesting enough. Quite by quite a significant amount. By at least 5 million more. But it would be massively underneath Game & Watch, which sold 43 million. So, I mean, it's still quite a successful thing that is a different sort of hybrid system where we kind of are in the the world of trying to develop things that you can move around.
You can play on a bus.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm not saying it's fucking portable, I get that. But at the same time, it is different from sitting on your home console, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I do wonder.
It's developmental.
Yeah, I could imagine that we might get to the stage where you almost have to count VR headset sales as their own thing, you know, or that kind. I guess it's the same problem that you'd have with the old charts when they started moving away from CDs and towards streaming and stuff like that. And they're like, "Fuck, how do we count?"
You did that thing that old people do, where they arch their eyebrows.
I remember an old format.
The charts arch your eyebrows.
The charts.
So very quickly to finish up, then, favorite handheld console of all time?
Game Boy Advance.
I thought it would be. I thought that would be the answer. You'd already kind of answered that a little bit anyway.
What about you?
I'm going to be honest, as in, I don't feel like I had tethered enough emotion into a handheld console before. I'm still undecided about what my favourite handheld of all time is. I'm not doing that to be like, oh, I'll sit on the fence and not say something. Like, as in, you know that by now that I wouldn't do that. It's just that I haven't made my mind up yet.
No.
And I feel like...
And this is the journey we're on.
Yeah, exactly. And I've invited a DS into my life for the first time, hopefully from this week. So that'll be something where I've not owned a Nintendo handheld since I owned my Game Boy. I mean, if I was going to have a couple in my mind, it would be the Game Boy versus the PSP. That would probably be where I'm at, which is, is it a fair battle? I mean, they're both handheld consoles, and we're talking about them battling each other, so it would have to be. But at the same time, they're so vast and different, handheld consoles, that it's good to be able to talk about all of them, really.
Yeah,
so.
And like the magazine kind of alluded to, you hit the nail on the head earlier. Like, it kind of doesn't matter how many they sold or what's in there. Like, chances are someone loves one of them.
Yes.
And all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And all we know is that I love Mr. Game & Watch. Jesus. There we go. We are not sponsored by Retro Gamer, but Retro Gamer, sponsor us. Just answer our calls. Pick up the phone to Rich and let Mr. Turnover here know that you love him. I mean, he pays you £3 or £4 a month for a subscription, so don't be dicks.
We love you. Call us.
You sound so forlorn there at the end.
Well,
Don't listen to him, guys. It's okay.
It doesn't mean it.
I still love you. So, thank you very much for
Keep up the
listening.
good work.
We will put the link for buying the magazine into our bio and our blurbs and our socials, etc. If you do fancy reading it, we definitely would recommend it.
It's not an affiliate link. We're getting no money from this.
Oh man, like, as in,
if only.
Come on, there must be a way of doing it. Even if they're slung as a Pokemon mini, micro, whatever we'll call it. That thing. The Tamagotchi Pokemon. Thank you very much, guys, for listening.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Bye.